Ghana's economy is in a deep mess. Inflation is at a 10-year all-time high of 43.1%. The country is in a severe debt crisis and has even been declared essentially bankrupt. Protests have broken out in the country, with popular celebrities speaking up for the poor masses. But the truth is, this was not the case several years ago. In fact, Ghana used to be the nation citizens of other African countries traveled to when seeking for greener pastures. But with the downturn of the Ghanaian economy, nobody really wants to go there again. The question we are now asking is, what really went wrong with the economy of Ghana? Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and without much talk, let's find out. Endowed with gold and oil palms and situated between the trans-Saharan trade routes and the African coastline, visited by successive European traders, the area known today as Ghana has been involved in all phases of Africa's economic development during the last 1,000 years. You see, when Ghana gained its independence in 1957, its economy was stable and prosperous. Ghana was the world's leading producer of cocoa. It boasted of a well-developed infrastructure to service trade and enjoyed a relatively advanced educational system. Due to how prosperous Ghana was during this period, the president of Ghana at that time, Kwame Nkrumah, had plans to use the economic prosperity of Ghana as a ladder to diversify the economy and expand it. He began moving Ghana from primarily an agricultural economy to a mix of agriculture and industrialization. Because of the excess revenue Ghana was making from cocoa during this time, Kwame Nkrumah used it as a security to take loans to build factories that would make goods that Ghana used to import and process Ghana's exports. Nkrumah's plans was motivated by his desire to make Ghana less dependent on world trade. Unfortunately, the prices of cocoa, Ghana's main export, fell in the mid-1960s. This made it difficult for Ghana to pay back its loans and continue Nkrumah's plans. Corruption in Ghana during this time made the situation of things worse. In 1966, the military then had to seize power, going on to let the public know that they inherited a nearly bankrupt country. You see, after the military had taken over, people were expecting things to change, but Ghana's economy ended up being caught in a cycle of debts, weak commodity demand, and currency overvaluation. By the early 1980s, Ghana's economy was in an advanced state of collapse. GDP per capita showed negative growth. Mineral production had fallen by 32%, gold production declined by 47%, diamond by 67%, manganese by 43%, and bauxite by 46%. Inflation averaged more than 50% a year, going on to hit 106.5% in 1981. Ghana was in a very deep mess and was in desperate need of help. The government had to then reach out to the World Bank and IMF for loans. These loan requests were granted, but the conditions were very strict. The good part of the loan being that an economic recovery program was initiated, helping Ghana to then start to recover from its economic shambles. By the early 1990s, GDP had risen by an average of 5%. Inflation had been reduced to about 20%, and export earnings had reached $1 billion. Things were turning around. But the pivotal moment came in 1995, when oil was discovered in commercial quantity. And by 2010, when they had started production of this oil, Ghana's GDP experienced an instant 60% growth. Yeah, I know you might be wondering, how come, what happened? Well, when Ghana started its oil production, the government had to then recalculate its GDP to include the contribution of the oil sector to the economy, which then resulted in a significant rise in its gross domestic product. This increase in Ghana's GDP moved the country into a middle-income country. It also became the third wealthiest country in West Africa, after Cape Verde and Nigeria. After the changes in Ghana's GDP, the service sector became the largest sector in the economy, with a share of 51%. Agriculture, which was initially the dominant sector, accounted for 30.2%, while the industrial sector contributed 18.6%. By 2011, Ghana had become the fastest growing economy in the world. Between 2011 and 2018, Ghana experienced an average GDP growth rate of 6.6%, and by 2019 had become one of the fastest growing economy in the world. But now, Ghana recently has been facing some serious challenges. In fact, the country has been declared bankrupt, and it seems like things would be getting better anytime soon. So we are still asking what happened.
when you hear all these stories, Mr. President, I mean, Ghana was one of the rising stars of, the economic recovery of Africa, so to speak. But when you hear about all these issues with the economy now, what exactly went wrong?
Things started to go wrong for the Ghanaian economy in 2020. And this was largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic that plagued the world, the Russian-Ukraine war, and economic mismanagement by the government. I know you might be wondering or are curious to know in detail how all this came together to make a once prosperous country like Ghana go bankrupt. Well, it started in late 2019 with the breakout of a virus called COVID-19. This was a very deadly virus that went on to halt trade and economic activities of the world in 2020. There was little to no travel in the world. Everyone across different countries in the world was locked up in their houses in fear of catching the virus. A country like Ghana, where many of its citizens depend on agriculture and also depend on the need to go out every day to make ends meet, was really affected. The government then had to implement a populist approach, going on to spend a whopping $9.4 million to provide free water and electricity to citizens, going ahead to also feed 470,000 households during a 3-week lockdown in the country. The pandemic caused a sharp decline in Ghana's revenue. GDP growth in the country dropped drastically, tax revenue fell, and foreign exchange earnings was very low by the end of the year. In 2021, with the pandemic dying down and with hopes that the Ghanaian economy would bounce back, Ghana's president Akufo-Addo, instead of looking for ways to make the country self-sufficient, started trying to fulfill some of the promises he made during his electoral campaign. He started off with the construction of 111 hospitals, which had an estimated price tag of $1 billion, with pressure mounting on him to deliver on other promises he made during his campaign. And with revenue being down, the government was forced to borrow money. By 2022, Ghana was in a huge debt, and as if that was not enough, the unexpected happened. The Russian-Ukraine war started. This particular war has affected Ghana's economy in so many ways. First off is inflation. The Russian-Ukraine war has caused a surge in global energy and food prices, which has hit Ghana very hard. Ghana imports a significant amount of its fuel and food, so rising prices have led to higher inflation in the country. Inflation in Ghana currently is at around 40%, the highest level in over 10 to 20 years. Furthermore, the Russian-Ukraine war has led to the weakening of the Ghanaian cedi against the US dollar. This has made it more expensive for Ghana to import goods and services, and it has also made it more difficult for Ghanaian businesses to compete in global markets. Currently, the situation of things in Ghana is bad. Citizens have hit the streets to demand more from the government. The country has a public debt of $49.7 billion, and investors have begun to lose confidence in the economy. As a way to fight back by growing the revenue of the country, the Ghanaian government introduced an e-levy which placed a 1.5% tax on all electronic and merchant payments. But this has still not helped matters. The Ghanaian government earlier this year also got a loan approval of over $3 billion from the IMF to save their economy. And one of the conditions given is that Ghana would have to renegotiate the terms of its debt, even if it means extending repayment period. When confronted about the economy of Ghana, this is what the president had to say.
If I look at the Ghanaian economy at the moment, it's doing, I mean, let's just be honest, it's doing terribly.
Not terribly.
Well, your inflation in your country, inflation in Ghana.
I don't know the economy in the world that's doing well. Tell me
where
you are here.
Inflation in Ghana.
The highest inflation.
Well, 15.7%. The Ghanaian cedi has fallen 20% on the dollar, the worst after Russia, which has a lot of sanctions against it.
While there's a little bit of substance to what the president has said in that video, I also believe that the Ghana government had a role to play in the fall of the Ghanaian economy, and hopefully they rise back again. If you found this video insightful, then you will enjoy my video where I break down the economic transformation of Ethiopia. Don't forget to also smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one. Dewo.